What's going on, everybody? Sorry about that. I had some real issues getting the stream to start tonight. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but hopefully it's working. Um, so we'll just go ahead and go along with the show, and hopefully everything goes well. I'm not really sure what's going to happen, but we'll see. Thanks for joining tonight. Um, I haven't been on in a while. I was supposed to be streaming every Wednesday, and last August 20th was my birthday. And shortly after that, I had an injury. I have an injury in my lower back from dancing. My partner a while back we were doing a movement where she was hanging from my neck, and I thought I had all of her weight, but I didn't. So when she gave me all of her weight, I wasn't prepared for it. It pulled my head forward and it ripped some of the muscles in my lower back. So now that's been about 10 years, but now every 2 years or so, I end up having a little bit of a muscle spasm issue from that. But I'm just now getting to a point where I can actually sit down comfortably for a little bit. So I apologize for not being on my live stream like I said I would be, but that's why. So tonight I want to talk about something that was pretty important to me. I'm a huge movie person. So as I mentioned, or as the title suggests, this stream is going to be about the movie Hereditary, living with and overcoming mental illness from family and the JWs. So when this movie came out, I saw it by myself on a Thursday night, and it ended up being way more than I expected this movie to be. I really didn't have any idea that I would be in a horror movie and almost, tearing up at certain moments because there was so much more to this movie than what I thought it was going to be. Now, when I was a JW, this was a movie that I would not have even been able to watch because there is a demonic element to the movie, which I'm really going to stay away from that so as not to completely spoil the movie for anyone who hasn't seen it. And also because it doesn't really go all the way into what I'm discussing, even though it does a little bit. But just FYI, there will be some spoilers with this stream. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want to be spoiled at all, you probably want to leave this stream. But I think that with the movie also having this demonic element, it goes to show mental illness as almost a form of a demonic force that rips apart families. So let me just give you a bit of a background on my family and mental illness. Now, my father, this is going to be a really personal stream too, so I'm going to lay a lot out there that I really wasn't prepared to, but I think it'll just make the point hit home a little bit more. My father suffers from mental illness. He is bipolar. And there were times when, I was trying to do things to help him. He was experiencing, a breakdown here and there. And there was one time where I literally, my mother had to come and stay with me because he was having a meltdown, and he was destroying the house. And I went to the house to check on him, and the house was completely destroyed, and he was curled up under the dining room table, basically in a fetal position, just laying there. And I talked to him. I tried to, help him and tell him, hey, what can I do? Is there anything I can do to help? I brought him some food. I sat it down. I was like, what can I do to help you? I'm here for you. And I guess as a result of what he was going through, he wasn't able to receive that. And so he lashed out at me and started screaming at me. My father's a really big guy. So when he stood up and started screaming and yelling, and he kind of started coming toward me, I could look at him and tell that he wasn't there. There was a different person there. And so with him being in a rage like that, there was absolutely nothing I could do to help him at that moment. And ultimately, had I stayed any longer, it would have gotten violent. I'm sure he would have attacked me, and I would have ended up having to defend myself against my father. So I left, and I called the police to have them come and check on him, because there was nothing I could do to help him. So they just went and checked on him, and they made sure he was there. I left him some food, and I would periodically just drive by the house to make sure that it wasn't burning down or something like that. But he ultimately ended up having to be put in a hospital, and I didn't know. None of the family knew what happened to him. My mother wouldn't tell anybody where he was or what happened. So I ended up, the partner that I was dancing with was a doctor at one of the hospitals here, and she was able to pull some strings and let me know where he was. So I was not able to go see him, but I at least, was able to tell the family where he was. So we knew what had happened, so we were aware that he had mental issues. My mother is also mentally ill. I don't think she would admit it, but because of all the things that she does to manipulate people, she has anger issues as well. She never accepts responsibility for her actions. She does things that anyone else would perceive as really ridiculous and crazy. So I'm positive that she has mental issues as well. Her mother, would have been my grandmother, passed away from alcoholism when my mother was in her teens, I think. So I never met her. So that could have been a contributing cause to the way that her brain works. I also have 4 uncles, and 3 of them suffer from mental illness and drug addiction. I also think because of my aunt's disability that she suffers from some form of mental illness as well. And all of these things lead me to believe that I also have a form of mental illness. And that's just based on my own personal behaviors in the past. I've always kind of been someone who has a very addictive personality. I was always very impulsive. I used to think that I had multiple personality disorder. I used to think that I was, manic or depressive because of a lot of the ways I would behave. There would be times when things would be amazing, and there would be times when I would be in such deep depression. So I've always been really afraid, because of all the family members around me that I know for a fact suffer from mental illness, and from the things that I experienced in looking at myself growing up, that I would grow into having really bad mental problems. There was a lot of, fighting in my home family. There was a lot of screaming, abuse, which I always thought may have been the catalyst for some of the things that I experienced. Even in my marriage, my past marriage, her family suffered from mental illness, and her home life was a lot of fighting and abuse, physically and emotional abuse. So that led to both of us having those issues. So when we were married, there was a lot of, not an excessive amount, but more than I would like to have to remember, amount of arguing and screaming. And I think, of course, it was because that's something that we both had grown up around and experiences. Now, I don't say these things to bash my family or bash anyone around me, but it's just the way it was, you know. And even putting myself into this, that's just the way it is. It's the truth. So in order to really get to the root of things, I just think it's just best to just go ahead and say what really is happening, and that's what was really happening. And also, being a Jehovah's Witness, when I was growing up, looking back at it now with all the research that we have, you know, we know that statistically speaking, many Jehovah's Witnesses suffer from mental illness and depression and try to or actually commit suicide. So this movie really struck a chord for me as I watched it. And I think I understood the movie in a very different way than a lot of people may have. So to go through this, I've assembled a few clips from the movie, and I'm going to show these clips and talk about how they correlated with my family life growing up, with mentally ill family members, and with my own fears of mental illness, and how it related to being a Jehovah's Witness as well. So, all right, let's just jump right in. So, let's get to this first clip. Now, in this clip, the mother of the family, and in the family in the movie, there's a mother, a father, an older son, and a younger daughter. So in this scene, she's going to a meeting to talk to other people about her mental issues and her family. So let's just check this clip out, and here we go. All right, so in this clip, we see that she talks about and admits that her mother and father had these mental problems. And I think the issue is, though, is that an excuse or a reason or both to mistreat family members? I think many people know they have issues, but refuse to admit to it and to get help for those issues, which cause them to spread to other people. And also points to these things being something that is passed down through hereditary, like mental illness. But in the case of the JWs, it's also a religion that can cause mental illness, which is also something that is passed down through hereditary, in the sense that if your family is in it and you're born into that family, they're going to pass that religion down to you, which can also cause you to suffer from mental illnesses. So it's also like this religion is a mental illness that's passed down through hereditary means. She also feels blame for separating her family to a degree, which is something that I felt also from waking up from the Jehovah's Witnesses. That can cause you to split up your family, and you are in some aspects to blame for that, which can cause a lot of guilt, which it has with me and a lot of other people. There are a lot of times when I thought my waking up is the direct cause of me splitting up my family, or me being split from my family, which it was, of course, the reason for me splitting up or being shunned from my family. But in other ways, I also thought that me waking up and separating myself from the family caused a lot of the rift between my family in general. And that has been something that there have been many nights where I just sat and thought that it was my fault. And it really made me feel really sad about that. So I'm going to move on to the next clip. And in this next clip, something happens with her son, and her son is driving her daughter or his little sister, and they have an accident that results in the death of his sister. I'm not going to play the scene where she's actually killed, but I'm going to play the scene that shows what happened as a result of that. All right. So this is how he deals with that situation. So I know this is a little dark, but what happened was he comes home after the accident. His little sister is dead in the car. He comes home, parks the car, goes up to his room, and goes to bed. He doesn't say anything to anybody. He just comes home and goes to bed. So I think this relates a lot to how families with mental illness know that they have done things to each other or to themselves, but they never talk about it. They just kind of keep it in, and that just causes things to get progressively worse over time. I'm sure we've all had instances where, you hear about things that happen in your family once you've become an adult, and you think, damn, I never knew that happened. Or you've been wronged or have wronged one of your family members, and no one says anything and just leaves the mess where it is. Or in the JW congregation, there are horrible things that happen, i.e., all of the molestation that has occurred, where these horrible things were done to people and no one said anything, and the victims felt like they couldn't say anything, so people were forced to just find out later, and they would literally just go to bed knowing these things happen and not say a word about it, which caused those things to get worse, and people would just later find out and experience those same things, because with no one telling anybody, the things just keep happening. So then other people experience it. So it just makes the situation much, much worse because no one talks about it. Even to a smaller degree, people who were in the congregations were either wrong through spousal abuse, if they were married, or they had overbearing elders who were being, very mean and vindictive and overbearing to people. And since you were just a part of the congregation, you were basically just forced not to say anything. And every night you would just have to go to bed with those issues and not be able to say anything about it. And it would just progressively get worse as time went on. So really quickly, guys, let's take a little short break from the clips. Let me just go look at the chat real quick. Hope everybody's okay. I'm really sorry for this late start. But hopefully everything is going well now. Lambo Calrissian. Hereditary was awesome. What's up, Raspberry Rollin'? Self-Care Boss. I appreciate you guys coming into the chat. Coming into the show. I really appreciate it. If you guys could, if you haven't already, please like the video so that we can get more people to come into the chat and join us. have some great conversations. We'll open up, or I'll open up the phone line a little bit later if someone wants to call in. That'll be cool. The call-in number will be 615-412-9335. We'll open that up a little bit later on in the show. If you guys want to support, you can support by joining me on Instagram or Facebook. You can also become a patron at KFits on patreon.com, or super chat, or donate through the Cash App, so we can keep these videos going and try to help as many people as possible. So yeah, guys, let's just keep this show going. We'll go on to the next clip. Now, in this clip, the mother is going to go and talk to one of her friends about some issues that she's having. So let's sit back and watch this part and see how this conversation goes. So she talks to her friend about something bad that happened to her in the past. Now, as XJWs, we know that something like this isn't really possible. You could never go and talk to a friend and tell them something that you did that was wrong, because your friend would go and tell on you. Then you would lose whatever family and friends that you had, which, if you were already suffering from some form of mental illness, that wouldn't do anything but make it worse. So being a JW can be a breeding ground, I think, for mental problems. And also from a family standpoint, there are those of us that have done something to someone or vice versa and apologized, but you know that your family will still treat you differently because of it, whether you have mental issues or not. So that kind of brings the question that if they do treat you that way, does forgiving them over and over again help either of you to deal with it, or does it just continue the process of hurting each other? In my case, I was always the one that was there to help everybody, but I always felt like that help wasn't returned. I forgave a lot, even though I was always helping and doing the most to help my family and wasn't harming anybody, but I always felt like there was some type of resentment toward me for doing that. So how can you really fix that was what I always dealt with. So that'll be something that I'll touch on a little bit later, but let's continue. Let's go to the next clip. Now, this clip was pretty much my favorite scene in the entire movie. The family is having dinner, and in this moment of anger, a lot of truth starts to come out. So let's take a look at this clip. All right, that scene was a lot to watch. She talks about a lot of things in that scene that I really can relate to. She talks about how he sneers at her. And as XJWs, I think we've all experienced the way your family looks at you when you come around, or when you start to wake up. The way they look at you with so much vitriol when you start to talk about the things you've learned after you start to research the religion, and how you feel about life now that you've woken up. She says all you do is look at me with that face on your face, and that fake look of tolerance that you get, or that shut up look that you get from trying to be honest and talk to your family about how you feel. Like, like when I told my family about not wanting to be in the organization, and I told them I would not be going to the Kingdom Hall with them anymore, I got that same face on their faces. They looked at me with this blank look, like I want to say, it was almost instantaneous that they stopped accepting me. And it was a look like, I am only sitting here so that I can hurry up and say goodbye to you. So I'm sitting here and I'm looking at you, but I'm not really looking at you anymore. I'm just waiting for you to stop talking so I can say goodbye and pull away. Then our son says, go ahead and talk, release yourself. And she says, oh, release you mean? And he says, yeah, fine, release me. And it's almost like our families or my family just want you to say, they just want you to come out and just say, I'm not going to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. I hate the religion and I hate that you're a part of it. And I'm leaving and I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's almost like they want you to just say that so they can just move on with their lives and not feel any guilt because you are the one that walked away from them and not the other way around. And also that look on his face as she's talking to him. I remember having the same look on my face when my mother was yelling at me at the top of her voice because I wasn't coming around anymore. And when I actually did go back and try to talk to them, she was yelling at me so loudly, and my father was just sitting there, and I was looking at her like, I cannot believe this is my mother talking right now. It was literally like a completely different person. And I just sat there and just looked at her while she was yelling like this. And I kind of was thinking, okay, my dad's going to say something. But he didn't say anything. He just sat there. And she was just like in the movie, this guy. He just sat there and she was literally yelling at the top of my voice. It was so weird. I actually had my iPod in my pocket so I could record the conversation and revisit it later. And she was yelling so loud that her voice was picked up perfectly on my iPod in my pocket. And having an iPod in my pocket lets you know how long ago this conversation happened. And she also, the woman in the movie, talks about how she defended her son and how she, all I do is work and defend you. And see, at one point, my mother actually left the congregation and I was still in the congregation. And the elders, would come up and ask me, where's your mom? How's your mom doing? And why isn't she here? And I would always say, well, why don't you call her and talk to her yourself and try to find out what she's going through so that you might understand why she's not here. And they would always say, oh, yeah, we'll do that. But I don't think they ever did it. So I never, ever let anybody talk ill or speak ill of my parents in the congregation. But when I left, it was the complete opposite. And I heard all the negative things that she was telling people about me and all the negative things that people were saying about me. So that really resonated with me too, because I know maybe other XJWs will spend time defending, or in the beginning, maybe defending their family, saying, I get it. They're just trying to come to grips with it. Which makes it even worse because you're still trying to hold on to that and be loyal to your family, even though that loyalty isn't really being returned. And when she was saying, the woman in the movie was saying, I know you miss her and I know you're in pain and I wish I could shield you from that pain of knowing what you did. And I relate to that because that's exactly how I felt after leaving. It was almost like I killed my family by leaving, and I'm in pain. And I wish there was a way that I could be shielded from that, but there really isn't, And she always, the woman in the movie also spoke about how it was such a waste that this happened, and how somehow it would be great if it could just have brought us together, and that they could maybe do something with their family. And that's just also the way I felt, because it was almost, I know a lot of us wish that, hey, you can maybe go and tell them, hey, I found out this stuff researching this religion, and they would be like, really? And they would look into it, and then they would say things like, oh man, I see what you're saying, I didn't know that it was this way. And you could be like, yeah, and you could come together and be happy and save your family. But that's not what happens. You know what I mean? It basically kills them in your mind, or in their mind it kills you to them, and there's no way to rescue and save it. Sometimes, for the most part, we don't get that bond and that relationship back. And she also says, the woman in the movie also says, now I can accept and I can't forgive. And that is so true, because even though I feel that my parents are dead, I can't accept the fact that they're dead, because they're not. You know what I mean? They are still here. They're just choosing not to be a part of my life. So I really can't accept that they're gone. And I really can't forgive them, because they are actively doing the things that are harmful to me, in the same way other families are still actively doing the things that are harmful to the people who have left the organization. It was really a really powerful scene, and that scene in the theater, I was kind of like, it really hit me. I kind of had to just take a minute and get myself together, because I was really about to let it go in the movie theater on that scene. So real quick, let's just take a look, see who's in the chat. Let's see what's going on. Lambo Calrissian says, but in the Latin alphabet, Jehovah begins with an I. Indiana Jones. That was a great scene. Self-care boss. That shielding is so sad to me, because from my understanding, it doesn't represent the witnessing and love that Jehovah represents. It makes you think, is there some type of spiritual possession that takes place to be a successful Jehovah's Witness? Wow, what a great question, man. What a great question. I literally kind of have to stop and think about that. Some type of spiritual possession that takes place to be a successful Jehovah's Witness. Man, that is a deep thought. And I mean, you have to kind of think about what type of spirit that organization is really conjuring. You know, they talk about the Holy Spirit, but you know, is it really a Holy Spirit? What type of spirit are they actually invoking and instilling in people in this organization? That is a very, very deep thought. Wow. I wasn't expecting that, self-care. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Really quickly, guys, if you haven't already, please like the video, just so we can get as many people here and watching and chatting with us as possible. Again, thank you guys so much. I know I had a really late start today, and I apologize for that, but hopefully I think I figured out what happened, so I don't think I'm going to have that issue going forward. All right, so let's keep going, guys. This show is actually a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. I had no idea it was going to end up being almost or longer than an hour. But hey, I'm enjoying it. This is a fun time. Let's keep going. So, in this next scene, it's a little over the top, but I think it still gets the point across. And I think a lot of times being over the top is a great way to get a point across. Sometimes you don't have to be nuanced. Sometimes it has to be a little bit over the top to get a certain point across. So in this next scene, it's very over the top. The point is very over the top, but I think it still connects. So let's go to this next clip. In this scene, she's going to walk into her son's bedroom while he was sleeping. He's going to wake up and they're going to have this conversation. All right. So this is this is a flashback to the scene earlier when she was talking to the lady about how she was awakened after pouring lighter fluid on her son and herself and setting them on fire, but she stopped and didn't strike the match. So in this scene, she admits to her son that she really didn't want to have him. Now, as we learn later in the movie, we learn that this kind of leans more toward the demonic part of the movie. But what was still significant about that to me as an XJW was that she tells him she was trying to save him. But in trying to save him, it did nothing but drive a wedge further between them. Once he got light of that knowledge, it just drove a wedge between them. And in the end, it causes her to see herself as being devoured in flames, as if to say, my trying to save you did nothing but cause you to hate me. And I destroyed myself in the process because of the hate you now have toward me, causing me to almost hate myself for even trying, which is something that I personally have felt. Several times I've thought, as I said earlier, that I was the cause of the whole thing. And I've struggled with feeling like a horrible person for simply waking up and trying to save them, and thought of myself as sitting back and watching myself and my life basically just go up in flames because of me trying to save somebody. I'm pretty sure several people have felt that way. I've talked to other Jehovah's Witnesses who have felt that way. So let's go on to this next clip. Now, in this clip, the son is at school and he looks in a window, in a glass, and he sees something in his reflection. Let's just take a look at that and see what happens. All right, now, now again, in the movie terms, this is something that deals with the possession part of the movie. But to me, it was really akin to what people in the organization call living a double life. And I say that because growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, I always knew deep down that I didn't want to be one. Even when I was trying to get baptized and do everything that would make it seem like I really want to be a Jehovah's Witness, I never really wanted to be a Jehovah's Witness. So there were times when I would get ready to go to the Kingdom Hall and I would be getting dressed and I would look in the mirror and I would hate the reflection because the person that was looking back at me in the mirror wasn't really the person I was. And I know it may sound like I'm reaching, but I'm really not, because it's really true. There were several times, like, I don't have any pictures from my past now because I either lost them in the fire that happened, or since I don't have, access to my family anymore, I don't have any pictures. So I literally have no pictures from my family, basically. I basically have no pictures. But when I did have pictures, when I would look back at myself in those pictures of me being in a suit and with my book bag and smiling, it always looked like somebody else because I knew how phony I was being in those pictures. So it never really looked like I was me in those pictures. It always looked like somebody else looking back at me. And even for a long time after I left the organization, I couldn't wear a suit, and I wouldn't wear one because every time I put on a suit, it made me feel like I was going to the Kingdom Hall. So for a long time, I never wore a suit. I would always just wear like sweatpants and jeans. And only up until a few years ago did I actually start dressing up again. It took a lot for me to be able to wear a suit and just think I'm trying to look nice as opposed to I'm going to the Kingdom Hall. So that scene, I was really thinking, wow, I have literally felt that way. This movie really, I think it really has a whole lot of meaning other than the demonic part that the movie has, with the mental illness aspect, the family aspect, the young man that is growing up and dealing with the things that he's dealing with. There were so many different things in this movie that I saw that really related to my life, which made watching that movie so difficult and really good at the same time. I've only seen the movie twice, and I really don't think I'll watch it again. So I think that was enough. But there was a lot in that movie that I really related to. I'm going to take a really quick little break here, look at the chat, see what's going on. Lambo Calrissian, hey, thanks for the $4.99 super chat. He said, for knowing the Indiana Jones quote. I appreciate that, man. Yeah. I remember going to the movies and seeing that Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade being a Jehovah's Witness still. And I remember when he says the name of God, Jehovah, and like everybody that was a witness in the movie was like, oh my God, he said it. Like we were the only people in the world that had ever heard that name before. But I really, I really remember being like, oh my God, this means we're right. They're acknowledging it because, you know, Steven Spielberg had enough sense to be able to read a book that has had that name in it for like thousands of years. We somehow thought that was some type of validation that we were right. Anyway, thanks, Lambo. I appreciate you, man. Self-care boss said, I immediately thought of that when you mentioned the facial expressions. Yeah, man. It's crazy. I've really seen that happen so many times. All right, let's hop back in. We only have 2 more clips, guys. We are in the home stretch. So, in this next clip, she asks her husband to help her. And we will see what happens as a result of this request. So let's take a look at it. Yo, wow. So she asks him to help her. He tells her he can't sit and aid in her delusion anymore. So she throws the book into the fire, and in so doing, seemingly trying to help herself, she causes her husband to be engulfed in flames. Now, I think anyone who has mentally ill family knows that trying to help them is a really tricky situation. You'll either help them if they want help, or you're going to end up losing yourself in the process, almost causing yourself to be consumed in the fire of their illness. It's a very difficult situation because you want to help, but you also don't want to lose yourself in the process, because as we all know, good things rarely rub off onto people, but bad things easily rub onto you from other people. So, like I touched on earlier, I tried to help. I tried really, really hard to be there for my family, but since I felt that I was also suffering from my own issues, it was really difficult for me to keep my sanity while I was at the same time trying to help somebody else find theirs. So I had to walk away. And I found that in walking away, the mental issues that I was dealing with reduced significantly. I've been able to really evaluate myself in a way that I wasn't able to when I was surrounded in the situation by people with mental illness, because being around ill people constantly causes illness to become normality. So once I walked away, I was able to see a reflection of my own illnesses in them and start to identify the things I need to work on in order to better myself. Now, do I still struggle with things from time to time? Of course I do. But being able to actually identify a weakness in myself is what helped me to strengthen myself against it. There's a famous quote that says, "You don't get rid of your demons, you just learn to stand on top of them." And I think that in my own journey, that's really what I've learned to do. Now, this stream is getting a little bit longer than I thought, so here's the final clip. This clip shows a sculpture that the mother made. This is a really short clip. I'm just going to play it. So, in this clip, this sculpture was a sculpture that the mother made, and it shows all these houses in the ground covered in all this dirt and muck and in all this disarray. And on top of that house is another house under the ground that's in the same condition: dirt, muck, disarray, and another house under the ground, dirty, mucky, disarray. More and more houses under the ground that are dirty, nasty, all in disarray, up until you get to the very top. And then there's this beautiful, perfect house. Now, the thing that made that sculpture so dope to me was that people who are in the situations that I'm speaking about, with either mental illness or being unhappy as a Jehovah's Witness, you have this facade of this perfect house that's in perfect working order. But we all know that the foundation that house is built upon is a bunch of other houses or situations that are just dirty and covered in muck, which those things are really the way you really feel inside. But in order to function, either as a Jehovah's Witness when you're unhappy or in a family that has mental issues, you have to look like the house that's on top. You have to put this beautiful facade on that isn't really real, just so you can deal with reality. At some point, I hope for myself and for others who are unhappy as a Jehovah's Witness, or unhappy trying to be happy as an ex-Jehovah's Witness, that we all get to a point where we can get rid of all that dirt and muck that's underneath the facade that we put on, and get to a point to that facade is actually real, and that we don't have to deal as much with the dirt that's underneath the facade of the front of the face that we put on. So that's it, guys. That is my breakdown of the movie Hereditary and how it deals with mental illness in families and Jehovah's Witnesses. I really appreciate everybody who's watching, everybody who chatted. Self-Care Boss, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for all your great comments. Lambo Calrissian, thank you so much for donating. Everybody, thank you so much for coming into the chat. I will probably be more on my schedule now. I'm not going to be able to do Wednesdays like I thought because I've been asked to teach at a studio here in Nashville on Wednesdays. So I won't be able to do Wednesdays, but I'm going to try to make my live stream day, my regular live stream day, every Thursday at 7:30. So hopefully next week I won't have all these technical issues that I had this week. So yeah, guys, I think we will go ahead and wrap it up because there's not very many watching now. I think we're at about 5 or 6 watching. So unless anybody has any other questions or comments, thank you so much. This has been a great discussion. I appreciate you so much, man. Thank you so much for being in the show, in the chat. If anybody has any show ideas or things that they would like to talk about, please, let me know. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram. A lot of the friends that I've had now have found me on Facebook and Instagram, and I've had some really great conversations. So you can find me on Facebook at KFitsMyLife and on Instagram at KFitsMyLife.